Hola amigos, bienvenidos a otro episodio de Generación de Tecnología. Now, if you're a subscriber of this channel, you know we like looking at alternative viewpoints of Star Wars. Especially when it comes to dissecting the hypocrisy of organizations like the Jedi or Republic. It's not our intention to frame the traditional good guys in the franchise as bad guys. It's more of an attempt to make us aware that in life there are very few really good or really bad guys. Most of the time, it's just normal people trying to survive in this crazy, crazy galaxy. Now, one of the most controversial subjects that the Jedi and Republic have to face on a day-to-day basis is the issue of slavery. First, let's define slavery by using the Merriam-Webster dictionary. There are a lot of definitions, and this will give us a little more context. Definition number 1, drudgery, toil. I guess a job that you don't like can be considered slavery. That's maybe too broad of a definition. Definition number 2, submission to a dominating influence. Like getting someone to tap out in an MMA fight, or maybe a spouse that is a bit overbearing and controlling. Closer maybe to what we want, but not exactly the right definition still. Definition number 3, the state of a person who is chattel of another. For those of you who don't know what that means, including me before I looked it up, chattel means personal possession or property of someone. That is the definition we're looking for. How does the Republic deal with slavery? Well, according to the Galactic Constitution of the Republic, all sentient beings are considered equal. This also means slavery and forced servitude is outlawed. Furthermore, the Galactic Constitution guarantees protection against such hardships. This seems pretty clear, right? Slavery or the outright ownership of another individual is outlawed. So is forced servitude, so I guess that would mean like bonded labor or being an indentured servant. Also illegal. But of course, these types of legislations and rules that government passes are generally built for smart and rich people to exploit and figure out a way around them. If you're an American, you know exactly what I mean. We're a country full of bullshitters, financial engineers, and lawyers. That's why we're unstoppable. The same type of individual also seems to rise to the top in the old Republic as well. And while being compassionate and treating your employees well will create long-term success and stability, if you want to just turn and burn and create some quick cash and hurt a lot of people along the way, there's no better way to do it than with slavery. Today we'll be looking at several different cases where Jedi encounter slavery and look at how they dealt with it. Let's start off, of course, with the Jedi Order itself. According to the US State Department, one of the categories of modern slavery is the unlawful recruitment and use of child soldiers. As we all know, the Republic allows the Jedi to recruit and, if required, forcibly take children away from their parents and induct them into the Jedi Order. This is legal in the Republic, but by our own standards and by the standards of most countries and governments in the world, this would be not only very immoral, but also illegal. These children at ages as young as 10 or 11, sometimes even younger, will be pressed into service and take on combat roles. It wasn't uncommon for teenagers within the Jedi Order to lead troops into battle as commanders. Now, technically, a Jedi is allowed to leave the Order whenever they want, as in the case of Ahsoka Tano, who was a child soldier. But the whole situation still reeks of child slavery and abuse. The Jedi Order not only condones this activity, but encourages it. Not so great. The main argument for recruiting Force sensitives, as far as the Jedi are concerned, is that it keeps potentially very dangerous individuals from falling to the dark side. As for the use of child soldiers, I guess the Jedi consider Padawan physically capable of entering combat. However, the Jedi fail to realize that the Padawan are far too young mentally to comprehend such violent and dangerous situations. Our next case is also very clearly illegal. The Galactic Constitution states that all sentient beings are equal and slavery is illegal. The entire clone army was made up of sentient beings that were considered property of the Kaminoans, contracted by the Republic to serve in the Grand Army of the Republic. In the case of the clones, leaving the GAR would be considered desertion, and that would lead to punishment and even execution, which is within the realm of normal procedure for many armed forces in our own world, but in this case, the clones are born and created for servitude. They have no other choice than to fight for the clone army. There could be an argument, however, just like the debate on whether droids should be given the same rights as organic beings, that clones are not sentient beings but copies of sentient beings, or some other convoluted explanation. With the right lawyers and legislators and need for a military force, anything could be explained. However, the Jedi once again as an organization failed to see the moral issues of employing a clone army. The Jedi Order at one time was seen as the defender of the weak and a moral compass for the Republic, but by the time of the Clone Wars, they fall in line with the soldiers and prepare for war. What is more troubling is that the Jedi were placed in direct command of these clone troopers, and it was common for the Jedi leaders to view these clones as no more than organic droids, ready to be thrown into the meat grinder. So, on this account, they once again are a part of a system that enslaves people. It also doesn't help that a Jedi Master, Sifo Dyas, was partially responsible for creating the slave army. The Jedi Order, in this case, sidesteps the responsibility of pointing out this blatant slavery and instead claims that they have a responsibility to defend the Republic against the Separatists and potentially even the dark side. This would be the old ends justify the means approach. Very disappointing. When Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn escape the planet of Tatooine with the Queen of Naboo, their first and most important mission is to protect the Queen, and then second, find a way to repair their ship. Along the way, they meet a young Anakin Skywalker and his mother, slaves to a local junk salesman named Watto. Padme, insulated on her own pleasant mid-rim world of Naboo, remarks how surprised she is to find such archaic practices still alive in the galaxy. Surely the Republic's anti-slavery laws would prevent such things from happening. But Shmi Skywalker reminds Padme that Tatooine was in Hutt space and outside of Republic jurisdiction. Now, the Jedi Code, like any group of rules or laws, can be quite confusing because it fails to adapt to real-life situations. The Jedi are sworn to protect the weak from suffering and danger, but at the same time, they must respect local customs and rules. Especially as representatives of the Republic, attacking or stealing from a legitimate local businessman who is following local laws, more or less, could potentially cause a political incident. Also, their central mission was protecting the Queen of Naboo and keeping undercover, something that would be hard to do if they were running around freeing slaves. Eventually, Qui-Gon Jinn does make a wager with Watto and frees Anakin, but he does no such thing for Anakin's mom, because she's not Force sensitive, and it's probably better for Anakin to be separated from his mom so he can focus on becoming a Jedi. Later on, during the Clone Wars, Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ahsoka Tano ventured to the world of Zygerria. A long time ago, Zygerria was the capital of the Zygerian slave empire. The Jedi had waged war against the Zygerians and destroyed their entire slave trade infrastructure. But during the Separatist crisis, the Zygerians were quick to join the CIS and quickly re-established their slave empire, and started enslaving sentient beings illegally seized by the Separatist droid army. In this case, an entire colony of Togrutas were kidnapped during the invasion of Kyros. Anakin was sent there on a mission to infiltrate and damage the slave trade, which they succeeded in doing. In this case, the Republic's overall military strategy saw Zygerria as a potential target because it could provide the Separatist war machine with cheap labor. The Jedi Code and the Galactic Constitution just happen to align with this military objective, which says a lot about the hierarchy of what is important for the Republic and the Jedi. When Obi-Wan was still Qui-Gon Jinn's Padawan, they traveled to the world of Pajal, where they encountered Sersica Arms, a major corporation in the galaxy known for producing a variety of different goods, including combat gear and weapons, particularly slug throwers. While boarding a ship to check out a distress signal, they encountered many Sersica servants with stamps on their wrists. These were essentially slaves, although officially we would call them bonded laborers. A bonded laborer is an individual who owes a debt to an employer and chooses to work off that debt as repayment. During the rapid expansion of the city of Dubai, there were several concerns that bonded laborers, mainly from South Asia, were being used to build infrastructure and large skyscrapers there. These individuals were usually brought to Dubai by a recruiting agency from their own country, which basically trapped them in a situation where their living costs and expenditures far outweighed the wages that they were being paid, therefore trapping them in a job, which in practice made them essentially slaves. Combine that with poor working conditions and even diseases like tuberculosis, and there was a real moral crisis at hand. Now, Sersica seems to be using a similar method with their so-called employees, but honestly, they don't even seem to be trying to hide the fact that they are slaves. And they also seem to be outright buying slaves from traffickers. Although Qui-Gon Jinn clearly feels bad for these slaves, there's really nothing he can do. Sersica Arms is incredibly powerful as the Galactic Senate, some might say. And the Jedi, well, they serve the Republic. Once again, politics and financial influence get in the way of the Jedi Code and just basic human decency. After the Jedi Order was destroyed, much of the politics and infrastructure and bureaucracy that came along with it was destroyed as well. This allowed the Jedi that were left more freedom to pursue their own individual interpretation of the Jedi Code. During this period of time, the Empire loosened regulations on slavery. This included classifying Wookiees as non-sentients, which is funny but kind of mean. Then there was Imperial Decree A-SL-4557.607.232, which allowed slavery to be used as a form of punishment for criminal activity. Shortly after the Battle of Yavin, Luke Skywalker joined a mission on an Imperial military factory world known as Cymoon 1. While on that mission, Luke encountered a group of slaves. The rebels' primary goal at the time was to destroy the weapons factory on Cymoon. There was no mention of slavery because they thought the factory was automated. Even though it wasn't a part of the mission, Luke made the decision to free the slaves and, with the help of the rebellion, safely extracted them from Cymoon. Luke did this because he was a morally righteous individual and also fell in line with the Rebel Alliance's main goal. This was a war about hearts and minds. The rebels stood no chance in winning a conventional battle against the Empire and depended on such heroic actions to inspire more people to turn against the Empire. Earlier during the Galactic Civil War, Jedi Commander Kanan Jarrus and Jedi learner Ezra Bridger embarked on a mission with the primary goal of freeing Wookiee prisoners from the space mines on Kessel. This once again falls in line with the moral principles and ideological beliefs of the Rebel Alliance. And at the same time, it would harm an Imperial operation on that world. From what we can see, without a more structured organization like the Jedi Order, the Jedi were more free to engage in situations as they saw fit. There was more trust placed in the individual instead of overarching rules designed to regulate an entire organization of Jedi. Also, the rebellion had very little to lose and were at war with the Empire. The Jedi's moral code and ideology was aligned with the Rebel Alliance's military goals. This again illustrates the biggest problem with the Jedi Order and had become too rigid and caught up in the politics and craziness of the Republic. I always argue ideologically driven organizations like the Jedi are better off probably locking themselves in seclusion away from the rest of society. They definitely should not be commanding armies or be servants of a political institution. This video also gives us the opportunity to question what exactly slavery is. As our society progresses and we become more advanced and refined, so does our definition of social issues like slavery. Were those workers in Dubai who were indebted to recruiting companies slaves? Some more extreme and radical individuals would say that the average worker in a 9-to-5 has become a slave in our Western capitalist society. Others would say that we are slaves to technology or social media or our phones. What about another big issue that plagues a lot of individuals in the United States? Student loans. Sure, we aren't required to go to college or forced to take out a student loan, but how many 17 or 18-year-olds actually have the maturity and intelligence to make such a decision? How many of them are being conned into taking a $100,000 to $200,000 loan, which is essentially a mortgage that will follow them around for the rest of their lives for a bachelor degree in something stupid like bowling industry management and technology or film production, as I did? Is this slavery by your definition? Is it immoral? At what point should we act, or should we even care? Clearly, the Jedi Order had a huge problem figuring these sorts of things out. So there you have it, guys. That's our analysis on how the Jedi handled slavery. As you can see, they did a pretty terrible job. But let me know in the comment section below what you think about this whole issue. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.